Kevin, first of all, thank you for taking the time to sit down with me today to talk about the release of your book. Congratulations, first and
Thank you
foremost.
very much.
I've
Thank
read
you.
it twice. I love it. For people that don't know you, who are you? What are you all about?
Um, so I have run a social impact firm for the past almost 2 decades. And what we do is we pair brands with talent with nonprofits. And I've always been about trying to create a positive impact in the world, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And I am an eternal optimist who started a company and it took off very quickly, and we got to work with brands like NBC Universal and Vanity Fair and The Roots. And then I met my wife, and I'm always been a hopeless romantic, and we could not get pregnant. 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 years, 5 years, and I talk about this in the book. But it was like, you I was achieving all this in my professional career, and then I couldn't do the simplest thing that
Mm-hmm.
men and women are, well, not just men and women, but people in general have been doing since for centuries, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And or more. And it just felt like, what's wrong with us that we can't make a baby? And it turns out there was nothing medically wrong with us. And there was just some trauma in my wife's past that we had to kind of work through, because the mind is a powerful thing.
Mm-hmm.
And once we did that, it took us 5 years, but then we got pregnant, and it was so exciting. And yet, all of that strain and stress and trauma of 5 years of trying doesn't just dissipate or go away. And I spent so much of my energy focused on helping my wife through um, what she was going through, that I never thought of what I was going through. And I think this is
Right.
something that happens a lot with men. I was focused so much on trying to solve the problem that I didn't take any time to kind of think about what I was feeling and going through. And it was a very tumultuous pregnancy. My wife's a diabetic. It was a difficult birth. And then when we got home from the hospital, I didn't recognize myself in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And I was having panic attacks, and that's not me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And in the joke of a role reversal that I mentioned in the book between my wife and I, um, we have discussed before this concept that, like, my wife was the douchey dad. And I and I almost wrote this book to kind of teach her what mental load is, and to um, to bring us to a point where we had true care equity and we were really sharing the load together.
Yeah.
But you can't really get mad at someone for not doing something when they don't really know, when it's not natural to them,
Mm.
right? And you can't really get mad at someone for not sharing the mental load if they don't know what the term mental load means. And there's a
Right.
lot of shaming in parenting culture. And the problem is, first, we need to educate and we need to
Yeah.
empower. And so that's where this book came out of. But even before the book, I during that first year, I didn't really recognize myself in the mirror, and so I decided to take some time off from work and spend some time with my son, support my wife as she went back to work.
Mm-hmm.
And it was hard because it's my company, but I stepped away, and it was the best decision I ever made. It was very difficult and very exhausting, obviously,
Yeah.
as any stay-at-home parent knows during that first year. But it was also extremely isolating. And
Yeah.
whereas there's a lot of moms groups out there and a lot of support, there was nothing for dads. And I got rejected from all the moms groups. I would go to the park. The moms thought I was picking up on them. I couldn't find any support. And so I started a podcast, and I called it DILF, Dad I'd Like
Mm-hmm.
to Friend. And it was just to find other people that I would want to friend. And, and it took off. And I realized that I was so not alone in all the feelings I was having.
Right.
And whereas initially I just wanted to interview other dads and kind of find other dads I would want to be friends with and learn about their experience and find a way to talk through some of my trauma. I started to realize very quickly that none of these things, that they were universal feelings, and that many
Right.
men were feeling these same myths that that our society kind of pushes on us. Like, you'll feel
Yeah.
an instant bond with your baby. That doesn't happen with a lot of men. Two
Yeah.
thirds of new dads feel left out of the equation. Um, there's no room for mistakes. Or even the most horrible myth, men have no interest in the upbringing of their children. It couldn't be more
Mm,
true. And
yeah.
especially in today, like even just 10 years ago, it's like night and day. But
Oh,
this narrative
absolutely.
perpetuates, you know?
Yes. You mentioned just a side note, you mentioned you can't get mad at somebody, for what they don't know, essentially. My first thought was, well, actually you can. And that's what's really hard, right? Because as a
I shouldn't
mom,
say can't. I should have
you
said
shouldn't,
shouldn't.
right? Yeah, because my first thought was, I don't know. I think I've gotten mad at my husband for saying I don't know. But that it's a good point that you bring up that a lot of moms, and not just moms, but speaking from my perspective as one, we do get mad at our partners for not showing up in the ways that we need, even when they don't know how to. And that's hard because then you build this resentment towards your partner. And I believe it was on your podcast, you were talking about, and this was, I think, an earlier episode, but talking about resentment that you had built up for your partner because there was that lack of, I believe you called it care equity. So there just
In
wasn't.
our role reversal. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And so we shouldn't, but we do. And that's so hard on the receiving end of that too, because our partner, they don't know what they don't know, right?
Yes.
And like you said, specifically with men, just societally and kind of culturally, we've really let it get out of hand with just the stereotypes and the tropes of men don't want to be involved. They don't want to be. They want to have a kid, but they don't really want to be a dad and a partner, and they don't care. There was a Forbes article that came out today. It was amazing. I encourage everyone to read it. It was really well written. One of the quotes that really stood out to me was, you said, when dads struggle in silence, everyone feels it, which I think is so true. I cannot emphasize enough. Everyone always says that the mom is the kind of the emotional temperature in the household. She kind of determines, the vibes. I think that's also kind of outdated. I think putting that weight just on a mom is just not really appropriate. I think everyone feels when any partner is is struggling, and it sounds like that's kind of where you were at, and that's what the book was kind of birthed out of in the podcast, as
Absolutely. And I
well.
think there's two things to say. Number one is that it's not just when dads are struggling, everybody feels it. When anyone in the home is struggling,
Of course,
everyone
yeah.
feels it. But there's this absurdity that's like, well, men don't have feelings. Or it doesn't matter. Like just shut up and fix it and help me. And it's like it does. If someone is struggling, how can they be a support system to you? And that is the same. That goes for moms as much as it does for dads, as much as it
Mm-hmm.
does for the kids. Anyone that's struggling is not going to be of support to you. And so we need to
Absolutely.
support the whole family unit.
Yeah.
But secondarily, and just as importantly, something that you mentioned, um, there's this concept of maternal instinct. And there's been um, some books and controversial theories that it's kind of a myth in itself, this concept of maternal instinct. And not only does it put this weight on moms that, oh well, it comes naturally to moms, so just have moms deal with it. But then
Mm-hmm.
there's a two-sided coin, because it also can bother moms if you say you maybe dads also have this instinct, and it's like, oh no 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 no
Mm,
no, that's mine, I own that.
yeah.
But you
Yeah.
can't necessarily have it both ways, right?
Right.
So there's
Yeah.
got to be some type of, I'm going to a chapter in the book that people really resonate with is, there's only one way to do things. And that's something that
Yes.
I
Yes. Yes. Yes.
struggled
Yes.
with
Yes.
during my time during that first year when I was taking care of our son. And my wife would come home from work and she would try and help. And I'd be like, you're doing it wrong. That's not how we do it. And it was not only hurting me because I wasn't able to get the support I needed when she came home, but also just hurting her confidence and hurting our
Yeah.
relationship
Yeah.
and just creating this barrier between us and between her and our son. And I discussed this in detail on the podcast, but it was something that very much bothered me. And it's a term that goes along. Have you ever heard maternal gatekeeping?
Yes.
It's a
Yes.
very powerful term,
Mm-hmm.
where, and I say, because I was the maternal gatekeeper, I prefer to
Right.
just call it gatekeeping. And at the
Yes.
end of the day, as a gatekeeper, there's a lot of different reasons. Partly I was doing it because I was so resentful that she got to go to work. I chose to step away from my career for, 9 months to a year to be able
Yeah.
to, connect with my son and reconnect with myself. And it was a beautiful and wonderful experience that I would never give back. But simultaneously, um, it was hard. While I'm getting yogurt thrown in my face, she's at work with coworkers and having a nice lunch. You know what I
Being
mean?
treated
And
like an adult with
exactly, she can go to the
dignity.
bathroom. Like
Yep.
she's able to go to the bathroom. Like I was not able
Yep.
to go to the bathroom.
Yep.
And there's a lot of things that I talk about in the book that is just it's not genderized. It's based on
Right.
who is caring for the kid, and we just, because there are a lot of moms, and even less now than there used to be, even though we don't update all the numbers. There's this whole narrative that mental load is solely owned by moms. And it's not only not true, but it's a dangerous myth. And it's as
Yeah.
dangerous as the concept of maternal instinct and maternal gatekeeping. It's just gatekeeping. And it's just,
Right.
and it's just this concept of parental instinct. And it is absurd when you put that only on women and then are mad at everyone else for not carrying that equal load.
Right.
It shouldn't just be on women, but that also is on all of us, including moms, to change the language, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, I could not agree more. And I relate so much to the gatekeeping, especially. And that chapter really put me in my place, talking about there's not one way to do everything. That was hard for me, being somebody who is a little bit of a control freak sometimes,
Me
who's a
too, me
little
too.
bit of a perfectionist. Like if my husband was making dinner, I'm over his shoulder, like, I don't know if I would use that much seasoning, or if he's doing the dishes, I'm rearranging the bowls. And there's no reason for that, right? But if you can imagine in the pressure cooker that is postpartum, how much more that came out of me, that tendency to want to critique and to step in. And there's a lot of reasons for that.
Absolutely.
There's anxiety and wanting to make sure my baby is safe. And so, occasionally there might be something somewhere that I would step in and help him learn, because I have seven siblings. He's an only child. So of course there's certain things that I might just know, right? But that was maybe like 1 out of 15 times that I was stepping in was actually helpful or necessary. It was just me also having some of that resentment, right? Like, you just don't get it, even though that whole time he had such a strong desire to be involved and was really wanting to and trying to. And I could not let go of that maternal gatekeeping. Well, I'm the mom, so I just know best with everything, right? And I
I
think
mean, I
it's
can't tell you how many times I saw it yesterday, Kristen, where I saw a dad carrying his kid around by the beach, and lovely relationship, and they were doing good, and the mom was pregnant next to them, and it was sweet. And then she just kind of took the kid from the dad, and the dad was like, "I'm fine," and she was like, "I know," and and it was one of those things where it was like, but he was fine. So it's almost like you can't be irritated at someone if you're not allowing them the chance. And my wife actually woke me up to that when she was like, I need to be able to fail to learn. And you're
oh
not allowing me to fail
yeah,
because you're trying to save the day first. And I was like, ooh, light bulb. Like, that's such a big thing to realize. Like, I'm not saying fail like you're going to hurt your kid,
right,
but
right.
everyone's allowed to try their own way. And that's one of the big things in the there's only one way to do things myth chapter. Debunking that is this concept of that's because there's only one way that's ever worked for you. And
Yeah,
maybe if you see someone else and give them a chance to get their sea legs, you'll find there's a whole nother way. And what an amazing lesson that could be for your child and your
yeah,
children, that, oh, there's more than one way to do things, and mommy does it this way, daddy does it this way, or if you have two daddies or two mommies. Like, it's such a beautiful thing to be
yeah.
able to see the array of differences in how things can be done and not be so set in your ways. It really opens your
Yeah.
eyes.
I'm still having to work on releasing that control. And that is so hard. But the way that I've seen my anxiety lower, my son and my husband's connection increase, right? Because there's not that constant intervention with mom. Now I'm seeing just it's night and day the difference in his relationship with my son. I
Yeah.
mean, they're just two peas in a pod now, right? Sometimes I'm like, remember her birth due. But then I have to back up and say, no, this is how it's supposed to be, right? Like you
It can
said,
feel so threatening, but it's so,
yeah.
in the end, it balances out. Everyone's going to get their share. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Yep. Yep. And it's easy to, like you said, it's what we've gotten used to, just kind of culturally, what we've been told that maternal bond is so valued and it's held so high in such high regard, I guess, that it's almost become kind of toxic. And I think it's not in any way disregarding the bond that's there because the bond can be different between different parents.
It's also incredibly insulting to anyone who didn't birth their baby if you think about it logically from the perspective of I adopted my child. So you're saying
Mm-hmm.
I have no instinct to who they are, or
Mm-hmm.
I had a surrogate. Like it is so dismissive to non-birthing parents in a
Yeah.
way that does not help birthing moms. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
It helps no
moms
one.
need more support. The answer may be to give more support to those who didn't give birth in order to
Yeah.
give more support and empathy to moms. I think that that it started off when the podcast took off. We launched Dads Supporting Dads, right, in this
Yeah.
movement.
Yeah.
But we quickly realized it wasn't just dads that were struggling. It was
Right.
moms through surrogacy and adoption were having a very similar experience to dads.
Yeah.
And so many people in the LGBTQ plus community. So that's why we launched a larger nonprofit called All Parents Welcome. And Dad
Mm-hmm.
Supporting Dads is just kind of one arm of that to be able to
Right.
say, this is a much bigger issue. And there's
Yeah.
so many different things coming in, and everyone's against each other. And it
Right.
shouldn't be moms against dads or working moms against non-working moms. Because let's face it, who's a parent that's not working? You know what I mean? We talk about that a lot in the book. Like, there's no non-working parents.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just
kind
are
of an
you paid for
oxymoron.
the
Like
work you're doing or not?
you're
Exactly.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's like so much of this is about parental mental health. And no one
Mm-hmm.
talks about that. Everyone just wants to talk about the kids. And that's important. But if you're a mess, back to the original statement, if you are struggling, how can you be of support to anyone else? And that includes your kids.
Yeah.
So we need to make parental mental health more of a priority. And a lot of that comes to supporting one another and stopping
Right.
this. It's a big part of Instagram culture, this us against them mentality that makes people
Yeah.
so much money and they get so many hits, but it's not really helping families or any of us.
One of the things that I wanted to ask you and kind of get your perspective on, something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, when we talk about men needing to be vulnerable, to be,
Yes.
you mentioned the dad having secure attachment to their baby and kind of what secure attachment means, which I thought it was interesting because I've actually never seen the term secure attachment used in the context of a father's relationship with their kid, right? And it actually caught me off guard. I thought, oh, well, secure attachment is when a baby is has a secure attachment to their mother, right? They have that emotional consistency, and it caught me off guard. I was like, oh, he's talking about it in the context of with the dad. Why was that foreign to me to think about the baby needs to have a secure attachment to the father as well? So
Or to the,
if
and just the
or
parent in general, because
caregiver,
again,
yeah,
it always goes back to the birthing mom. And I
yeah,
don't, I think that is a outdated mentality. You have to birth your baby to have a bond with your child and create a secure
yeah,
attachment. And I think
yeah,
that is some of the pressure that is on moms that should not be, right?
right,
And that
right.
specific, the narrative needs to shift on all sides, and everyone needs to relinquish a little.
Yeah, absolutely. In the previous generations, men were not raised, from what I've seen, to be comfortable being vulnerable and in touch with their emotions to know how to connect with their child or know how to open up to their partner, how do those men show up for their partner, for their baby in that emotionally sensitive way when they were not raised in that way? They didn't receive that type of love from their parents, right? They were told, don't cry, man up. Boys don't have feelings, right? How do they show up as a dad? And again, and this can apply to anyone. How do they show up and be sensitive and vulnerable when they didn't have that growing up? What's your
I get
perspective
asked
on
this
that?
a lot.
Yeah.
I have very strong opinions on it because I this podcast, has been around since 2020,
Mm-hmm.
and I have been around on this earth longer than that. And I've always found it easy to talk to my male friends, um, and my female friends. But I mean, I found it easy to get people to open up. And with the podcast, it came about where people said, "How do you do that? How do you get these men to cry on the podcast? How do you get them to talk?" And I'm like, "How do I get them to stop talking?"
Mm.
And people say, "But I don't understand. My partner doesn't talk." And I say, "Do you allow them the space to?" Because at the end of
Mm.
the day, it's not about the men being vulnerable. It's a lot of times about creating a safe space. And that is something that's very missing from our society.
Yeah.
Um, I do think that culturally, um, and I'm not talking about the workspace, but in personal spaces, um, women are very comfortable talking about their feelings with other women,
Yeah.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
men are very comfortable talking in surface conversations about
Mm-hmm.
the game or um, about very surface topics, what I mean, that don't
Mm-hmm.
have to go deep. But if you open up that door and you vulnerably start and then allow the space for someone, um, it's it's shocking what will start to pour out. And I say this in personal experience in that my wife was raised a lot. If she's Minnesotan, and it's the way you are talking about with not really always not her parents are amazing people, but not really a culture that talked about feelings immensely in their
Yeah.
home. And if if we start a topic, it's not like she's ever going to cut me off to talk about what she's feeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I might, because I tend more feminine qualities with regards to articulating my feelings,
Right.
right?
They're more easily
But
accessible, closer to the surface, easier to,
exactly.
yes. Yeah.
But empathically, I know she has something to say. And so, as
Mm-hmm.
long as I bite my tongue and allow the space and maybe the silence for her to do so, she will. And then once she starts, it just keeps coming. And then
Yeah.
we allow that safe space. Too many people don't like awkward silence and they need to fill the space.
Mm.
Well, you
Mm-hmm.
need to stop filling that space and allow
Mm-hmm.
the silence for someone else to be able to have. When you don't have that comfort and ease of being able to express your emotions, you need that maybe awkward silence to be
Yeah.
able to grow the cojones to fill it, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the same thing of allowing your partner the space to make mistakes, also allowing them
Mm-hmm.
the space to figure out what they're feeling. Maybe they aren't someone who was raised to even ask themselves how they're feeling. So they
Mm-hmm.
need that
Yep.
space to be able to not only ask themselves, but then get it from heart to brain to mouth and out. Um,
Yeah.
and you don't need to just fill that space with your opinions all the time. That's why we talk
Yeah.
about the weekly business meeting in
Mm-hmm.
the chapter "You'll Never
Super
Have
helpful
Sex
chapter.
Again."
Yes.
The weekly business meeting is all about allowing each of you this forum to, like, literally, my wife and I, like, we cover our mouths, like, bite your tongue and allow that person to go through their whole emotional arc, no matter how long
Yeah.
it takes, without responding or reacting. And it's
Mm-hmm.
a really big thing once you create that safe space.
Oh, absolutely. I will not get it all into my husband's business. I told him I wouldn't, but I'll just say I relate a lot to the dynamic that you've talked about in your relationship. And I've been with my husband for 10 years this month, actually. Oh, my goodness. And I have learned that over the past 10 years that skill of shutting up for 5 seconds and giving the space to let him be vulnerable. And you mentioned the silence being uncomfortable, but sometimes necessary to give them the opportunity to open up. And it reminds me of, you talk about the mind numbing activities that a parent might turn to,
Yes.
thinking that that is a form of self-care, or they're giving themselves a break from the stresses of parenthood. And so it makes me think, for both parties involved, they need to allow themselves the silence to reflect on their own emotions, and then their partner needs to give them that silence to then share. So it really is both parties involved being really intentional about that. You either mentioned it in the book or the article. I don't know, I've been reading so much, I'm loving it all. But you talked about, in today's culture, the productivity culture, there's always something that we're doing or wanting to do. That really is a killer when it comes to the self-reflection that's needed, the silence, the meditation, the just, thinking about, what do I feel right now? Like, what's going on inside of me? And then for your partner too, to be able to put the phone away, you know, silence the notifications, and just focus on their partner and really listen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And because of the instant gratification culture that, isn't just social media,
Mm-hmm.
like they used to say, the MTV generation, long before, social media. But at the end of the day, that's where this concept of freedom shifts that I discuss is such a huge piece of the puzzle, because
Mm-hmm.
you can't expect
Yeah.
someone sitting in front of you to have their entire catharsis. Like, that freedom shift is each of you gets one per week
Yeah.
minimum. And it's like allowing that space for someone to do whatever the heck they want with no responsibilities, um, really allows the pressure off to be able to let your mind wander a little. And we really encourage on freedom shifts, as you mentioned, to avoid the mind numbing of binge drinking during your freedom shift, or
Right.
doom scrolling. Like, that's not going to let your mind be free. It's
Yeah.
okay. It's about connection, and finding some connection
Mm-hmm.
with a good book, with your body, with a friend, with, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And being
Different
present.
ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. To really bring yourself present. Connection often allows you to be present. And we won't go into intense detail on that, but the biggest thing I can stress is, when you work on your relationship with your partner, it's not only going to give you a happier home, because of the dynamic that you're not then putting on your kids and your family, and the
Mm-hmm.
strain in your relationship. But more importantly, it's going to make you better parents, because all the skill sets that you're growing with your partner, and the empathy and the allowing the space, is what your child is also going to need as they get older.
Yeah.
You can't just expect your child to tell you their feelings if you don't allow them the space to formulate them and tell you
Yep.
their feelings. And you can't just allow your child to get it right, every time, and be watching so they don't fall. They need to be able to
Mm-hmm.
fall so they learn how to do it for themselves. And we have to know that you're learning how to be a good parent by being a good co-parent.
Yes.
And that is such a huge aspect that we, start the book with, is, let's redefine this term co-parenting. How
Yeah.
obscene that we only say co-parents are people that are divorced and separated. Like,
Yeah.
why should you have to be divorced or separated and living in separate homes to be co-parents and each taking
Mm-hmm.
responsibilities in the home? You are co-parents because you are each parents working together. And
Yes.
I think that we should stop this absurdity of language that hurts us so much. You and your partners are
Absolutely.
co-parents, and you need to share responsibility, share communication, and share your wins and losses, so you can work together and model that for your child.
We've been together so many years. We thought, we have such a great foundation. We've been together for so long. Parenting is going to be nothing. Like, yeah, it'll be hard taking care of baby. We'll be tired, but the relationship won't suffer, because we've spent all these years having such a strong relationship, right? And I think a lot of people fall into that. We think that, well, I know my partner and they know me, and we really get along, everything's going to be great. And then you have a child, and then everything shifts, and you realize I have to put in work again with this relationship. This is a new dynamic. And
Yes.
all of the really toxic myths, right? The myths that you talked about. You when you go into it with all of those expectations, you're kind of set up to fail, really.
Yes.
And I think that's why it's the way that the book is formatted is so helpful, because it's really just to the point. It's like, here's all the things that you probably believe, and here's why they're really not true. Here's a much healthier perspective. Here's how to approach this. I think in one of your earlier podcasts, you talked about men don't, maybe they don't feel comfortable to show their enthusiasm about becoming a parent. They might not feel comfortable to show their real raw emotions when it comes to
They haven't been
having a
this,
kid.
given the space culturally, and
Yeah.
especially in the professional world,
Yeah.
to have those conversations and articulate those types of feelings.
Yeah.
But another thing you said, interestingly, people use the word control so much when it comes to dynamics with their co-parent and in parenting in general. And I think that's one of the biggest myths of all, is this concept that you have any control, right? Like
Yeah.
once you become a parent, like control really goes out the window, and it really is about what you said. It's
Yeah.
more about investment.
Yeah.
And you've got to invest and allow. You've got to allow the space to find your way. You've got to allow the relationship to evolve. You've got to allow your child to be the person that they are going to be. And you
Us
can help to
anxious moms,
guide.
we don't want to hear that we don't have control. We're like, no, but we do. But we just want to, but we don't. We really
I mean,
don't.
I am a control freak. So like, I know I have control over my actions, but I learned early on, way before a kid, that you can't control, and I talk about this in the book, you can't control
Mm-hmm.
what other people say or do. You can
Right.
only control how you respond, not react,
Right.
but how you respond. And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, that is such an important thing to remember as a parent. You could control your own actions, but attempting to control everyone else in the room is not going to, not only are not going to learn anything,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to grow. You're not going to allow the space for your partner or your child to grow, but it's not going to be a happy environment for anyone. Control,
Yeah.
when you're trying to control everyone else, you're automatically resentful, right? And it just
Absolutely.
creates
Yes.
a dynamic that doesn't help anyone.
Yep.
And just remember, you have control over your actions, but you have to allow the space for others to interpret that how they see fit and respond how they see fit.
Yes. That has helped my mental health tremendously. It's helped my husband's mental health tremendously. And I think this book can really help people to view things in a more positive light, give more grace, give more space. Obviously, we could talk about this for 6 hours, because I it's there's so much to talk about. So we have to wrap it up at some point. But I wanted to ask you, if you were talking to a new parent and they found out today, oh my gosh, we're having the baby we've always wanted, what would you say directly to them? What do you wish that you would have been told that day?
I think that one of the biggest pieces is one of the final myths in the book. And it's this concept that good parents always put their kids' needs first. And that is a very controversial myth for a lot of people, because they're like, duh, that's not a myth. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, it's the word always that's the problem,
Yeah.
because it goes back to the airplane, and like you can't
Mm-hmm.
help them if you're suffering. It goes back to what we said in the beginning of the conversation. And
Yep.
people start to make it all about their kid, and then they slowly but surely start to make it about their kid over their partner.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you know the band Johnny Swim, but Abner was on from Johnny Swim, and they're an incredible band. He's married to Donna Summer's daughter, and they are an amazing couple. But also, one of my favorite things he said was, "This ship has two captains, and we will steer it in the same direction,
Mm-hmm.
as best we can. But
Mm-hmm.
what it's like, basically, it takes one no, but it takes two yeses,
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's this concept of you're a team, and it
Yeah.
can't just be you and your baby against your partner. It's got to be this mentality of go in this together, and don't forget that you still need time for you and your partner.
Mm-hmm.
You still need time for you. And without those
Yeah.
pieces of the puzzle, it won't be the happiest family and it won't be the best environment for your kid. So you're trying to put your kid first, but you're actually not putting them first by never taking care of your relationships, including the relationship with yourself.
Again, thank you for taking the time to talk about all of this. I hope that it helps a lot of people. Congratulations again on the book coming out. To encourage everyone to read it. Where can we find you? What's your
Uh,
social media? Where can we look you up?
yeah, if you are on social, I'm at DILF Podcast, right? That's the handle. DILF, Dad I'd Like to Friend.
Mm-hmm.
You can also go to dadidliketofriend.com. If you want to learn more about Dad Supporting Dads, the nonprofit that benefits from sales of this book, go to dadsupportingdads.org. I'm sure a lot of people have seen that hashtag go
Mm-hmm.
viral, so it's exciting. But basically, it all goes back to this nonprofit about dads finding ways to support other dads. And then we have allparentswelcome.org, which is really a larger umbrella, starting to widen the conversation about not just being about dads or moms, but about,
Mm-hmm.
parents no matter how they came to parenthood. And you can get the
Amazing.
book anywhere you get books. I think I told you this earlier, last week on Kindle, we hit number 2 on the fatherhood charts and number
Amazing.
1 on parenting emotions and feelings. So it's starting to get momentum out there.
Good.
You could check it out and just Google the DILF Handbook. And the nice thing is that parents have been writing some really wonderful things, but a lot of people without kids have been actually
Yeah,
reading it in prep for kids or just in their relationships and finding gems in it about their relationships. And I think that's a really magical thing that I wasn't necessarily expecting.
absolutely. That's a lot of helpful resources. I love that all parents are able to feel seen, feel heard, feel included. And I think everyone should go buy the book. Thank you again so much for your time. It was an amazing conversation. Again, I could talk for 12 hours about this, but thank you for just giving us these little snippets. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.